Let's bring in now President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass. He's the author of the weekly newsletter, Home and Away, available on Substack, and former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, retired four-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis. He is Chief International Analyst for NBC News. Thank you both for being with us.
You know, Admiral, we are surrounded by armchair warriors who sit and drink their lattes in Manhattan offices and write editorials on their Apple laptops or maybe with their Mont Blanc pens, saying when it comes to nuclear retaliation by Russia after Vladimir Putin threatens nuclear war, they go, don't worry, be happy. It's okay. Go all the way to Moscow. Don't worry about that. Oh, they'll never use that. And now here we have Wall Street Journal editorial page saying that now is the time for Israel to invade. Now is the time for Israel to invade Iran, start a regional war. And if they don't start a regional war, and if the United States doesn't join them in a regional war in the Middle East, it means somehow that Joe Biden is weak. A summation that only the Wall Street Journal editorial page could come up with. That if Netanyahu does not start a regional war, it's because Joe Biden is weak. You know, you've known war, actually. What are the consequences of a regional war between Iran and Israel?
They're enormous. Let's start with the economics. If I'm in Tehran and the Israelis, quote, go big, unquote, one thing I'm going to consider is closing the Strait of Hormuz. 30% plus of the world's oil goes through there. Secondly, Hezbollah, although battered, still has an inventory of over 100,000 surface-to-surface missiles that could be unleashed at Israel. And Iron Dome is quite good, but it can be overwhelmed. Thirdly, Iran launched about 180 ballistic missiles, about twice what they did in the April strike. The Israelis, with some help from the admiral says U.S. Navy destroyers were able to shoot those down. Iran still has 2,000 ballistic missiles. That's the strongest part of their arsenal. So I think the idea of rushing into a, quote, go big, unquote, conflict with Iran on the part of Israel, a nation of, let's say, 10 million, 7 million Jews, Iran's population is 90 million. It's a big country with a lot of capability. So my advice would be exercise some caution here and work along that spectrum of response that kind of goes from cyber, non-kinetic, special forces, cruise missiles, nautical, go after the energy infrastructure, but do it in a defined, precise way. A wider war is going to crack the global economy for starters. I'm not sure that's in anybody's interest.
So, Richard Haass, that Wall Street Journal op-ed effectively says, if not now, when? That Iran has opened itself up to attacks on its nuclear facilities and military targets inside the borders of Iran. What do you suspect after the attack of yesterday from Iran sending those rockets into Israel? What comes next?
I believe Iran basically made a fateful decision. They decided that not acting would be costly. They may have tried to thread the needle like they did in April, do just enough so they can say they retaliated, not enough to trigger an Israeli response. But look, I take people at their word. I think the Israelis will respond. At a minimum, I think they'll go after storage sites, maybe production facilities of a lot of the systems that Iran is producing, either for themselves or for Hezbollah and others. My expectation is the United States will probably push back maybe against attacking oil facilities, in part because we're not anxious to see a larger energy-related war. For example, the Admiral correctly said about the Straits. They could also, like in the past, go after the Saudi oil facilities. I don't think that's something that could be ruled out. To me, the real question, Willie, is whether the Israelis use this as an opportunity to go after the nuclear program of Iran. Some of it's exposed, some of it's not. That's a big issue. And if they do go after Iran, let me just make another guess. I don't think regime change is something that's easily brought about. The Prime Minister of Israel is talking about it. History suggests probably not. But one interesting question is, if Israel attacks Iran, as I think they will that persuade the Iranians that now is the time they really do need a nuclear weapons program that in order to prevent such things in the future? So I actually think we're at what could be seen in retrospect as a massive turning point for the Middle East.